Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Conversation. I'm Jenn Hand with Informatica, and we're here today with Charlie Farhoodi, co-founder and COO of AI Nexus Healthcare. With over 15 years across finance, FinTech, EdTech, e-commerce, and digital health, Charlie now leads AI Nexus in using AI to predict and prevent illness. Thanks for being on today, Charlie.
Thanks, Jen. Thank you for having me.
So I'd love to dive in, given your unique background with different tech-driven fields. What are some lessons you've learned or things you've kind of taken away over the years about innovation and user engagement that are relative to AI solutions in healthcare from the other backgrounds and experiences that you've had?
Yeah, it's funny because I think one of the guiding principles in whatever type of product you're designing is keep in mind you're not the user. I think we always have a strong temptation to sort of think about what we really want and what we really need. But healthcare is a little bit funny because we are the users. Like we are all using, wherever you are in the world, whatever health infrastructure you have. So I think that's it presents some interesting challenges, and healthcare is also kind of unique in that unlike other industries where we are considered kind of consumers, we have some choice, we feel like we have the power, we sort of get positioned as patients often, and we're often on the sort of receiving end of what is available to us rather than us kind of actively making those decisions. So I think we sort of both feel that from the system and the infrastructure, but also kind of take on that mindset and give up a little bit of our agency that we wouldn't in other industries. So I think that has led to a little bit of a kind of dependency on the authority figures, the medical services, rightfully so, as far as us sort of waiting for them to tell us what we should be doing with our health and by extension our wellness. And of course that has become unsustainable. Arguably it never really was a functional model. But I think particularly since COVID, we've seen people, I'm sure yourself, I certainly have, take more of an active interest in our own health and wellness, try and understand more what we can do to make a meaningful difference, both in the near term and how those kind of near-term decisions stack up and start influencing our longer term health picture. So I think as people have become more interested, they've become a little bit more aware of how difficult that is, without the benefit of going to medical school. Okay, you get an Apple Watch. Okay, you get MyFitnessPal, you start exercising, but like, what if you have a heart condition? What if you're elderly? What if you have a disability of some kind? It can be a little bit difficult to understand how you tailor and personalize generic information that's out there on the internet or wherever you're getting it to yourself. So I think fundamentally this is the problem, the challenge for all of us in technology and in the healthcare space to solve. Not just think about coming up with cool new technologies or algorithms that look and sound, flashy, but think about how we can really kind of break down these barriers, both in people's mindsets and understanding how powerful we each are in our own health journey, but also work from the inside to try and break down some of those barriers that hold back some of these innovations in the more kind of traditional infrastructure. So I think that we can, as innovators, the onus is on us to really get creative about how we can bring these technologies into people's everyday life to make it a natural part of your day-to-day activity, just as natural and just as easy, and maybe at the same time as checking Instagram or making a stock trade on your phone or something like that, to really, go where people are, go into their lives and make this second nature, all while delivering the ability to really kind of understand on a personalized level what's happening with your body. And when things have kind of crossed that line into needing the intervention of a professional and providing that professional tools to make an informed diagnosis more quickly than they otherwise would. So yeah, from a user engagement standpoint, I think, there's so much data on all of us out there now. I think there's been, in the early days of this, people maybe didn't quite understand how much data we were each putting out there. And, we've all had that freaky conversation where you're talking about something and an ad shows up for it online. There's really powerful psychographic profiling, personalization technologies out there. I think we can leverage those, not just to, make us all spend too much money on Amazon, but deliver personalized personalized health advice and deliver it in ways and places that we're more likely to act on it and more likely to find it, relevant to ourselves.
Yeah, and it's an interesting point about bringing it into the day-to-day life, because so many other sectors now are just part of our daily lives. I think of online banking when it
Mhm.
wasn't online banking years and years and years ago, and now it's just so much a part of people's daily lives, checking accounts and looking at different transfers, or did that clear, checking credit card statements. And can that same sort of principle be applied to health? And I think it's really interesting, because if we look at, right, how much data we have, and can we tap into that daily to see, well, how are our biometrics performing? How did we sleep well tonight, and how can we change that? How can we leverage that information to get personalized plans, to have personalized health? One thing that popped into my mind as you were speaking is the sort of fear that people have around
Mhm.
this wanting to hold on to data. Like, I don't want people to know if I'm measuring things on my Apple Watch. I don't want people to have access to that. Do you have any thoughts on sort of, I don't know, overcoming that, to sort of to use it as a benefit rather than like have us be locked in fear around it?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And I think that, increasingly we're all becoming at least more aware that this happens or has happened. That they say, if the product is free, then guess what? You're the product. So from a data aggregation standpoint, so I think it becomes about a trade-off, which gets to education. And I think your point about online banking is a great one. As people have become more familiar and it's more natural to check your balance, you can even send wire transfers online, you check your credit score, whatever it is, just by the nature of exercising those muscles more. People have inherently become more educated on the matter. Tools like Robinhood or other online trading platforms that have made it really easy, and broken down a lot of accessibility. There may be other issues with products like that, but a lot more people now are participating in the financial markets. So I think from a health standpoint, as people begin to engage more, and start having that level of understanding of the benefits and the value, it really gets down to the value. Like, maybe you are willing to make that trade-off. You are willing to share that data about your medical history, your medications, your diet, your exercise, if you understand what you're going to get back from that. And if it's like, hey, you're going to get kind of personalized one-to-one advice, you're going to essentially get the expertise of the best medical minds in the world delivered to your doorstep, looking after you 24/7, then I think that starts to become a more valuable, or a more reasonable value proposition than just, hey, give us all your information, give us your data, give us, for apps that have like absolutely nothing to do or no business in asking for that information because all they're doing is just selling it on the back end. I think that's really what it comes down to. And then the other thing is, trustworthiness. Can you trust this technology? Is it, so that comes from seeing it deliver real personalized insights and value to you, not just giving you like a number, like, hey, your sleep score was like 72 last night. It's like, okay, great. Like, I don't really know what to do with that. But how do you action that information? Which again gets to kind of the, how you action that information is different than how I action that information. So I think it's about the credibility part, the trust, and then also having the technology be able to sort of explain and defend its reasoning. This is why I'm saying this. If you really want to know, that answer is that not everybody wants to know. They will just kind of take things at face value, which is fine. But some people will be hesitant, particularly those who are professionals in the space too, who have the training, have the understanding, will be inherently skeptical of something that claims to have some personalized insight. And I think unfortunately a lot of initial technologies that have come to market were sort of based on generalized information, generalized recommendations, which certainly have a place. If you fit perfectly in that kind of like bell curve of all of us, there's value there. But most people don't, in some way, some form, either through their demographics or their unique personal situations. Their access to healthcare is a huge factor in this. I really think that's kind of the key in figuring out the path forward.
Yeah, I think trust is a huge, I mean, it's at every event, at every sort of, webinar, workshop, conversation on LinkedIn. I mean, talks about how can we be trustworthy, and then the explainability too. I think that's a big thing as Chat GPT has kind of taken off in the world. and you see maybe hallucinations or some things not being true, it's like, well, how do we make sure in the health world, in the medical world, that things are actually like they are explainable, they are predictable, there's a reason for it rather than maybe the hallucination that people could be afraid of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it kind of gets to the, for better or for worse, AI is, an everyday term now. But I think that, there's a lot of different technologies that make it's just two letters, but there's a lot of different types of AI. AI is a complete field of study. It's not an algorithm or a bunch of different types of algorithms. I mean, people who are true experts in artificial intelligence, I mean, they study philosophy, they study how the mind works, not just how the brain works. Of course, they're experts and super smart at the technical aspects of programming too. But ChatGPT's been I think really, I mean, it is a really powerful tool, and the technologies behind it, the generative AI is really going to be transformative for all of us in many parts of our life. However, I think as more and more people start using it, they're going to start kind of running into some of the limitations, some of the things that are just they're not bugs, they're features of that technology, like the hallucinations. So as people become more aware, there's more understanding of the different types of AI and how those different technologies can kind of be married together to create holistic solutions. That maybe one part of the technology does have issues, like, for example, hallucinations, but it does have a great deal of flexibility and ability to generate really great content. You pair it with a technology that maybe is based on expertise of a human, that has some reasoning capabilities in it, and by pairing those two and having them work together, you now have a far more valuable offering. And ultimately, I think this is where these technologies are going to go in the future.
Yeah, and I do like hearing about the human component as well. People think AI is just going to take over the world, and it's like, well, at the end of the day, that and just thinking specifically in let's say physician visit. I mean, there still will be a place for the physician visit. It's just can AI become the tool, the alleviator of the easy work, the admin work, the things that would lead to exhaustion and things like that. So yeah, I think that, I mean, that's a whole can of worms in itself. Like, how do we marry the human component and then with the AI piece? But I wanted to ask you about unique challenges. So again, with your background, I think it's interesting that you have sort of different sectors that you've been in and have experience in. In terms of integration into healthcare, like what do you see the challenges are in AI integration versus something like finance or e-commerce?
Yeah, I think the the one that comes to mind first is, I was very fortunate to truly work with really high integrity people and high integrity firms in my financial background. But some of my former colleagues may disagree, but the clear difference is, with your health, it can be truly life and death, which isn't to say that there isn't a connection between your physical health and your financial health. Certainly, there are aspects, especially on the mental health side of things. But the stakes are just too high at the highest level in health to depend on technologies that getting back to the trust part of it, that you can't verify how or why they're coming up with something. So, for example, ChatGPT, it's very interesting because the output that it has can often be very human-like. It can respond as a human would respond. And I think if you were kind of on the other side of a chat with ChatGPT, you often probably wouldn't be able to know that isn't a human. But on the inside, ChatGPT isn't thinking like a human. It isn't coming up with that response in the same way that a human comes up with a response. So I think the key to solving some of these challenges is to, again, integrate these other types of AI technology that do attempt to sort of replicate how a human thinks and reasons. So when you present a solution, when either a diagnosis or a indication of disease is presented by the piece of technology, the human expert can sort of litigate it and investigate and ask why. Okay, how did you come up with this? And technology can say, hey, I did this scan, I did this, I looked at this piece of information, based on this, wholly accepted standard by some accredited institution. You know, if this and this is true, then this is kind of the recommended course of action. So that is why I've presented this to you. I think then you're able to start bridging some of those gaps, and overcoming some of the, you know, the early failures with some of these technologies that were purely patent based. Because again, we don't all neatly fit into a normal distribution. So, and the other thing is in healthcare specifically, unfortunately, I think there's just kind of been a historical kind of lag in the adoption of technology across the board, whether it's AI or other stuff. I think a shocking number, I think it's hundreds of hospitals in this country still use paper as kind of the primary method of documentation. It's not uncommon for, you know, I think we've all been requested by some, whether it's the insurance company or a hospital, to like fax something to them. And you're like, I don't even know where to go to do that. So I think just that too, unfortunately, is a bit of a barrier. And you know, with AI becoming so popular recently, you know, I think there's been a little bit of a rush to like, you know, get me some AI. We need some AI. Start using AI, without really understanding what that is. And to what we were talking about earlier, you know, AI isn't one thing. So perhaps they grab at whatever the buzziest or most accessible AI technology is. They integrate it. The results aren't great, and now kind of the whole kind of field is a little bit tarnished by that experience. So, you know, I think that's some of the kind of the unique challenges in healthcare.
Yeah, and I think though we are entering into a little bit of a phase where it's evening out in the sense that a couple years ago AI was the new shiny object that like, oh, we have to catch up, and now I think people are sort of it's become common in day-to-day language in healthcare. People are more aware of it and understand a little bit more about how, you know, its benefits. Of course, that comes with fear of, is it trustworthy, you know, responsible AI, that whole type of conversation. But I think it's people are now understanding like it is a long-term game. You know, it's not like we just have to implement this AI thing and that's it. It's like we're entering conversations at events in just industry speak where people are it's calmed down, so to speak. Almost like, yeah, AI is still buzzy, but it's not like the hype that it was a couple years ago.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you know, so kind of shameless plug for both AI Nexus and Informatica. You know, I kind of selfishly hope one, and also just for the benefit of everybody, that this sort of natural cycle of kind of, you know, hype, and then you get a bit of a filtering out of some of the you know, companies and technologies that aren't necessarily novel. They're just kind of, you know, repackaging really of ChatGPT. I think that's kind of been the biggest thing is people kind of wrapping that up and presenting it as a novel solution. So, you know, I think that it's just going to be a natural process, like with any new technology, as people become more aware, more educated, more discerning in their purchasing habits, and then it positions, you know, the kind of true practitioners of the science to be able to come in and make a more well received pitch, because the audience will have had some experience with the technology, rather than having to kind of do all that heavy lifting of like explaining, okay, this is what AI is, these are the different types of AI. They will sort of naturally have gone through some interactions with that, and you know, hopefully that leads to greater adoption down the road.
Yeah. So I wanna wrap up with a sort of a quick what comes to mind when you think of sort of the 1 to 2 biggest trends or opportunities you see in the future of AI in healthcare.
Oh wow. You know, I think it's funny because we talk about, you know, buzz and hype of AI. I think at the same time that people have been maybe overhyping AI a little bit, like in the near term, like, you know, what's going to happen in the next, you know, 6 months, 1 year, whatever. But at the same time, weirdly underplaying what it's going to mean in the long term. So, you know, I think the big challenge, you know, really kind of gets back to the trust and the credibility, like with any tech, whether it's AI or anything, right? Like, does it deliver value? Can it justify the costs? I think that's something that's being looked at quite closely right now, is the, you know, the amount of processing power needed, the energy cost, the infrastructure needed to operate against certain types of AI. Not all AI is the same. Can present some problems. And if you're, you know, if you're a CEO of a healthcare company and looking at bringing these technologies on, is there actual cost savings there, that the types of jobs that these could be augmenting or maybe creating some efficiency savings? Like, is there actually really a benefit in doing this? And then also from the regulatory standpoint, I think again, some of kind of the risks are is one technology becomes the dominant narrative in the media and in people, everyday people's lives, that sort of filters through to our policymakers, and all technologies and all companies kind of get painted with the same brush, and that nuance is left out, which again hopefully comes further down the road. But in the near term, that could certainly be a little bit of a challenge to the broader scaling of the technology. But I think from an opportunity standpoint, it's really unlimited. I mean, if you think about the power of these technologies, the ability to bring truly personalized healthcare, screening for disease, early detection, advice for each individual anywhere in the world, regardless of race, demographics, geography, access to healthcare, everybody having the world's best medical minds advising them, keeping watch, alerting whoever needs to make an intervention, whoever access to specialists around the world delivered virtually with technologies that can provide screening and insights on that patient virtually without the need for any physical devices. I mean, this is truly, and I'm not even touching on the power of drug discovery and things of that nature too, that using the genetic sequencing and things of that nature. I mean, the power truly is unlimited, and I think sometimes it's a little bit hard to even really wrap our minds around it, because it's infinite, right? I think that's really what makes it so exciting. But it's gonna take some steps to get there, and I think we're pretty far away from not having humans in the system, and I think rightfully so. And our philosophy as a company is you can't code doctors and other providers out of your software. You have to code them in, and you have to work with them as partners, because fundamentally they're the ones with the expertise. They're the ones who should be taking care of us. And it's all about just freeing up their capacity and scaling the best physicians worldwide to everybody that needs access.
That's a great point about the sort of short-term overhype and the long-term underhype, because it's like our brains can't actually wrap our minds around the infinite possibilities of
Yeah,
what AI could do in 10 years. I mean, truly,
sure.
I work in it daily, and I still, it's like 10 years, you're like, things have changed so much in 3 years, let alone down the line. So thank you so much for sharing your insights, for being on. We appreciate your time, and we will link to your company, to AI Nexus Healthcare, and thanks again. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.